Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Ashland Planning Board meeting of Thursday, March 13th, 2025. A reminder to everyone that the meeting is being broadcast and recorded. I'm calling the meeting to order at 7:18, and first on our agenda, as always, clerk's report. Kate?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have not received any correspondence since the last planning board meeting.
Well, that is easy then. We will go on to the next agenda item. Thank you. Next on the agenda is public comment. Peter, can you manage any public comment?
Of course. If there's anybody online via Zoom that would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. If there's anybody in the room, this would be the correct time to make your way to the podium. We have one person at the podium, Mr. Mark Dissoni. Mr. Mark Dissoni, please address the podium with your name and address.
Oh, I gotta do it again. Hello, podium. Thank you for setting me up like that. Okay. I'm gonna ask the question I asked last time through the chairman to the town planner. Any progress on working together with other committees about zoning and bylaws?
Mark, I can tell you right now that the main goal is staffing the zoning board of appeals and staffing this planning board. I would love to carve out a time to speak with you about zoning and the town manager. However, our schedules are busy. Town meeting is building. So I think if we can look to sometime into May, would probably be the appropriate time after town meeting, and then we can kind of go from there.
Okay, and I know that tonight is a little snippet of what you're gonna be talking about, so I'll wait for that.
Thank you.
I don't see anyone else with a hand raised. So we will go on to item 7, which is our first public hearing. This is 240 to 260 Pleasant Street. Peter, do you want to read that in? You want me to?
I can read it in for you. So the planning board will hear the petition of Metro West Facilities LLC requesting site plan approval, design plan review, and site alteration special permit per Chapter 48, Section 6 of the Massachusetts Zoning Act, in Chapter 282, Sections 9.6, design plan review, 9.4, site plan review, and Section 5.8, site alteration special permit of the Town of Ashland bylaws. The applicant is proposing to develop a recreational youth soccer field and tot lot playground area, additional permeable parking, modified two-way site access driveway, pedestrian walkway connection to the abutting parcel to the west, associated stormwater management facilities, utility services, landscaping, and electrical conduit, or by direct burial, wiring for future lighting on the field. This soccer field will serve as a ancillary use to the current facility, which is known as the Metro West Christians Academy and Connect Church. The total area of the development will be 1.9 acres. The property in question is located at 240, 260 Pleasant Street, Assessors Map 13, Lot 108 and 109, and is located with the Industrial District. It's also within the underground protection, the Groundwater Protection Overlay District, and the MBTA Communities the MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District. As a note, this past week, the Town of Ashland's MBTA Overlay District has been approved by the Attorney General's office. It is awaiting approval from EOHLC, the state approval agency. With that said, before I hand it over to the applicant, just to add a little color and to put us on Pleasant Street, this is right next to the Connect Church and the daycare facility. It is two, I'm not going to say abandoned lots. However, they're not manicured. There's some overgrown trees, overgrown vegetation, and they're almost used for, I would say, overflow parking. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so at this point, in this application is going to look to develop these properties into into fields, recreational space, obviously ancillary to the Connect Church and the Christians Academy. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to the applicant, Mr. Wayne, is it Bellick?
Bellick?
Mr. Wayne Bellick, who's from Land Design Collaboratives, who is representing the applicant. So Wayne, please take it away.
And
Thank
just,
you.
and just to note, we do have our fifth member online, at this time, because I know it's a special permit, so that just so you know, you do have 5 members of the board here now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Peter. Nicely done. Looks like you took half my presentation, which is much appreciated. Madam Chair, Wayne Bellick, Land Design Collaborative, civil engineers, landscape architects on the project. I'm joined here tonight by Jerry Schertzer. He's the director and executive pastor for Connect Church and the Metro West Christian Academy. Peter had pretty much covered quite a bit of the site. If we could go to, so Alvaro is going to be driving the bus for us to the site. So if we could, Alvaro, take it to the compiled existing conditions plan. A couple sheets down, please. That's okay. Actually, that may have been, yep, one more perhaps. There you go, thank you. So as Peter had indicated, it's located to the east of Connect Church and the Metro West Christian Academy. As you can see, it's divided into 2 parcels, both combined equate to about 82,500 square feet. There's 325 feet of frontage serving the 2 properties. The zoning requires 150 feet of frontage and 30,000 square feet. So with that said, it exceeds the frontage and lot area requirements. You'll note to the south of the property is the railroad tracks, the MBTA, and over to the right is an industrially zoned piece of property. The topography on the site is relatively flat, and as Peter had indicated, there's overflow parking there. It can accommodate, I looked at it, and if I look at the dimensional requirements for the town of Ashland's parking spaces in a 24-foot maneuvering aisle, it can accommodate about 30 spaces. That's a compacted gravel parking lot. The front of and the remainder of the property is, as Peter had indicated, is wooded with dense undergrowth, a lot of vines and dense undergrowth, not the most desirable situation. Topographically, if you look at how stormwater flows from the site, a portion of a small amount goes to the northeast, flows off of the northeast direction. A small portion goes to the southeast direction, but the balance of it, the majority of it stays on the property. There are some depressions on site which tend to collect the stormwater. The soils on site are primarily sandy gravels. We had done some soil testing, as you can see on the plan, and as was required under the state stormwater regulations and local stormwater bylaws. And we found that the soils out there were fairly consistent to what the NRCS has on file. The site is accessed actually to the northwest of the site. There's a paved exit to the site. So currently, Connect Church and Metro West use that as egress from the site. It's not an entrance as of this time, but they use it for egress. Alvaro, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please. Thank you.
Just a
Yep.
question, just trying to look at the site from above.
Sure.
What is the building? So it's Connect Church, and then it's kind of this treed area, parking. And what is the next building over?
That's an industrial use. The name of it escapes me.
Solar
That's the
flare,
solar flare?
and then this
solar?
is the weld.
The weld?
This is weld, right?
Okay. Just trying to get a sense. I
Yeah,
should
so if
know,
you're
but-
going down Pleasant Street, you have Worcester Air Handling, solar flare, and then the next one will be the well, right?
I feel like I drive by this every
It's actually kind of cool the way, and I'm sure he's going to talk about because he did, it's sort of hidden with the trees. And it sounds like they want to replicate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate the comments. So one of the things that I failed to mention, as you folks know, this is part of why that the overlay district was created. The Nyanza Superfund site is to the southeast of this, and the plume extends onto the property. We had received information, DEP and the federal EPA have this on file. There are no activity use limitations on the site or any other restrictions that prohibit any construction on the site. They do have in the southwest corner of the site, there are 3 dedicated wells, monitor wells, A, B, and C. It's the 4 series, 4A, B, and C. They use this for monitoring the levels of the trichloroethylene in the system, in the aquifer, or in the plume. And what they've indicated in the study is that the levels are very low. It's down about 70 to 80 feet. And what we've received from the EPA and DEP is that they don't believe there are any concerns. There are no concerns as to what the activity is on the property. They did ask Jerry and his group to just keep them informed as to what's going on. They asked for some soil data just to know what we found for soils, and they wanted the soil log information. So we decided that, we're filing the application, we'll give them everything. So what they have received is what you have received. So they have a pretty good idea as to what's going on out here, and we haven't heard anything. So like I said, we're sensitive to that as well. So we're going to start with a site prep, an erosion and sediment control plan. To the southeast of the property, there's a 100-foot buffer zone that's cast upon the property from a BVW to the south side of the railroad tracks. So in speaking with Peter, so our first meeting we had with the town, we've had 2 meetings with town staff. First one was planning and conservation. The second one was earlier this week on Tuesday with planning and conservation and all the department heads, and we fielded some questions from them, and they offered their thoughts. So with that said, our filing with Concom, which is concurrent with this, is not for the filing of a notice of intent. However, it's for their stormwater permit. So with that said, all work is being proposed outside the buffer zone. So what you see on this plan is the erosion sediment control barriers established out here. We've got orange construction fence around the well site area. One of the requirements of the EPA and DEP is they asked the church if they worded it, we respectfully request that you try to honor this area and keep it protected so that there's no activity over in that area. We feel that the plan does that, creating a vegetative buffer to the area. They plan to monitor this continually, so that would be the plan. They'd have access to it. So in any event, the plan shows for clearing out here to the erosion sediment control barriers. So the approach would be to go out, clear it, then establish the erosion sediment control barriers, then grub it, start to do some rough grading. Stockpile areas, as you see on the plan, are located to the southwest. So like any site, that's where we're targeting, but they will probably move as site conditions dictate. One of the very first things that we would look to do is create a sediment basin, and that would be located to the down gradient side of the site, primarily along the easterly property line to the south. We would introduce diversion channels. We would have a construction trailer out at the site for when they're doing their work, and we would also look to, and I'll get into this in a minute, but one of the plans here is to, as they go through the vegetation here, obviously remove and properly dispose of any invasives that are on the property. But while they're out there, what they're going to look for are some small shrubs that they could use as fillers along the frontage of the road, just to, again, make it to provide a little bit of a screening. So to the north of the site, more, pretty much along the center of the frontage, we're looking to propose an area where the the shrubs would be balled and burlapped and maintained to be hydrated so that when it comes time for planting, they can do that. So that's basically it for the erosion and sediment control. Alvaro, if you wouldn't mind. So this is the layout and materials plan. So what you see is a U12 soccer field that we're proposing here. It's a natural turf field. The parking on site, like I said earlier, we have 30 parking spaces currently on the property on the gravel parking lot. This would provide 49 spaces, so an additional 19 spaces. Access and egress in this case, as proposed, would be from Pleasant Street, and the egress currently that is all egress from Connect Church would then again go to an in and out situation at this location. So folks coming to use the soccer field would enter at this location. So the parking, as Peter had read into the minutes here, is ancillary to the existing uses. So it's basically they're generating another 19 spaces. They also wanted to create a recreational area for their students, so this is why we looked at a soccer field. And initially it started as just an open field, and you know, it was at that point Jerry said, hey, why don't we just shoot for the soccer field? Maybe there could be multiple uses in town for youth soccer. Maybe we can work with the local league and provide them some opportunities to use the field. They're also proposing a tot lot, about 50 by 50. It's going to be a hard rubber surface. And as I said, we have the parking area. The parking area is part of our drainage design. We're proposing a crushed stone parking area. The benefit to that is from a stormwater runoff perspective, it doesn't generate as much as a paved surface where pretty much all of it, with the exception of about 2%, runs off. In this case, we're going to take advantage of that stone, and that's going to be part of our stormwater system. We're going to utilize the voids in the stone. So in terms of access and egress, like you see up in the northwest corner, we're going to have access and egress into and out of the site. Stop signs will be provided at the parking lot as it enters to that paved surface area, and then there'll be another stop line and stop bar out at the street. The pedestrian way is going to be provided from the existing developed lot to the west, and then continue to the soccer field into the parking areas. That currently is proposed as a stone dust walkway. As part of the design, we're meeting the planting requirements out here, the landscape requirements, by providing some trees at various locations. If you look at what we're proposing 7 trees on the property, and then we would look to, as I discussed earlier, enhance the screening out at the street with the shrubs. So the plan would be, as we noted on our planting notes, that we would go out there with the representative from the town, probably the planning department, Peter Alvaro, the landscape architect, and the contractor, and view it from the street to fill the voids with the plant material that we've plucked. If we feel that the additional plant material is required, it would come from nursery stock. So from a layout materials perspective, this is, like I said, this is basically what we have. The rest of the area would be loamed and seeded. To the east and to the south, as I was talking earlier, is the primary portion of our stormwater basin. So Alvaro, if you wouldn't mind flipping over to the grading and drainage plans. Thank you. So, grading and drainage. The site is pitched generally to the soccer field. So from the parking lot to the soccer field, we have created a swale. In the swale, we have created proposed a half dozen or so. So the swale begins from the east side of the parking lot, or the west side of the parking lot, goes to the south, and then continues up north. At the low points in this depressed swale, we have area drains. The area drains are high-density polyethylene with like a beehive-type grate, so that in the autumn conditions, when the leaves come down, they don't get clogged and the wind will just blow them through and off the inlets. This was an interesting site. From a hydrology point of view and from an engineer's perspective, it doesn't get better than this because of the soils that we had. And because of what the church was looking to do and the school were looking to do on the property, it really didn't give us much room to discharge. So with that, we hit, this is basically the cat's pajamas in terms of stormwater runoff from the site. Because typically you address stormwater peak rates of runoff. You're not required to address volume under the state stormwater regs. You're required to, ensure that you're not flooding down gradient properties. But in this particular case, we don't have a detention basin, we have retention. Detention, to remind the board, is basically where you collect water and you release it at a certain rate. Retention, none of the water leaves the site. So looking at our pre and post development numbers, we have some water leaving the site pre-construction. Post-construction, it all goes in the ground. The system, like I said, from the drainage system, we're utilizing the stone in the parking area. We've done this on a number of projects quite effectively. Some of the projects were ground-mounted solar array fields, some of them fairly large solar array fields, and it's an effective tool. Typically, you take 40% void ratio in the stone. We're a little conservative on this one. We only took 20. So the fact of the matter is while everything functions on site, there is some extra capacity within the stone. So, like I said, that's basically the way it's laid out. The soccer field is crowned so that it pitches to either side into the swales and contained on the property. As I said earlier, the orange construction fencing will remain up during all phases of construction. The erosion sediment control measures will also remain in place until everything is stabilized and we get a sign off from the town. Alvaro, if you wouldn't, I don't know how much more we have here. So this is utilities. So one of the things that the town would like to do is, so obviously if they're looking to do a soccer field and it may host some games that may run into the night, we need lighting. So as part of this project, we've had a photometrics plan prepared, and we'll get to that in a minute. But we have lighting proposed at the four corners of the field. Those poles are going to be 25-foot tall. We also have some light fixtures for the parking area. So you'll notice to the east side of the parking area, to the west side of the parking area, and to the south, we're proposing some poles. Those are only 20-foot tall, different type of fixture. So those are night sky compliant fixtures, all LED. For the soccer field, something I should have mentioned earlier, and we have this, in fact, this was something that Alvaro brought up in our first meeting because of his lead foot in soccer, had asked that we provide the screening. So we said we were going to provide the screening in our meeting this week. So looking at the ends of the soccer field, we are providing 20-foot tall screening, but we have discussed with town staff about extending that screening a little bit further down from the corners, about another section of screening, which is going to be about another 10 to 20 feet. So that's basically the layout of the field. Do we have any more here, Alvaro? So those are the details. If you wouldn't mind scrolling down, I think I might have that's the detail. So this is traffic fire apparatus maneuvers. So while there isn't a building here, there are some instances we've seen cars on fire and the like. So what we did is we took, typically on something like this, you're not going to need a ladder truck, but we wanted to demonstrate that it would, a vehicle could easily maneuver through the site. So we took the biggest beast in the fleet, which would be the ladder truck. And as you can see, coming into the site from the east, it takes the left into the site, can loop around the parking area quite nicely, and then take that right turn to exit the site. Likewise, coming in from the west, same type of maneuver in and out of the site, and then proceeds to go westbound. And then Alvaro, if you wouldn't mind flipping to the next one, which would be, so this is an exhibit that's required in your in your zoning bylaw. It asks that there are some photos taken from the street to get an idea as to what it looks like. Now, I think it's disingenuous when consultants provide a board with photos of these lush conditions that you're going to see in South America from the street. Like I said, I think it's disingenuous. I think I want to see it. What does it look like in the winter? So what we did is we looked at 3 viewpoints, and provided you summer conditions and winter conditions. Alvaro, the next slide, please. So this is our photometrics plan. So there will be some ambient lighting from Connect Church and from Pleasant Street, but this is basically where we are. So we're pretty much at a half-foot candle at the street, keeping in mind that especially during summer conditions when there's going to be activity out here and the lights would be activated at night for the field, there's going to be vegetation. So you wouldn't be seeing the lighting from the street. So that, you know, in terms of its representation, would be more of a winter condition if soccer were being played in the middle of the winter, and we know that doesn't happen. So that's basically the photometrics plan. Hot at the fixtures, but as we move away from the fixtures, the foot candle distribution is diminished. Alvaro, I think that's the last sheet, right? Thank you. So with that said, Madam Chair, I'm ready for some questions from the board.
And I will definitely open it up to questions from the board. Thank you for that presentation. It was
Thank you.
really complete.
I can start out.
Please, go ahead.
I didn't get a chance to like scrub and measure the scale, the distance from the railroad, because I know the railroad's particular, and I guess we should at least discuss that. I obviously, we're not doing the construction, but if we approve something that might not, you know, so I guess, what do you know about the railroad?
So the railroad, in terms of the track itself or the
I mean, they
work
have a
that's...
pretty, often a very large distance that you can't work, it needs special insurance, all of that. And
Yep.
I don't know the scale on this, so.
Yep, so looking at the uses elsewhere on the property, this is consistent to what is happening over at Connect Church. So in terms of the insurances, I would have to defer to, if you're referring to property insurance or assurance that there's nothing going to be.
I mean, they call it railroad protective liability insurance.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it's under our purview.
Yep.
To ask for that. I think that we need to investigate. But I guess my concern for our board is if we're approving work within some zone that the railroad, do we have liability if we don't dot our i's and cross our t's about that? So I guess that's,
Yeah, that I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I mean, I have had a project myself, we're actually just talking about it before the meeting, of a residential project on the railroad in another town. And besides providing the railroad that, all this information about the project, there wasn't anything else that we needed to do. So I'm not sure, obviously this is a little closer maybe than my project was, but I think that it does, I think it goes to, I don't remember the name of the organization, but it goes to them for them to review as well, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
so we have to put that on our list, I think, then, to find out. Then, so obviously you need that screening, because it's pretty close to the road, and that's gonna be 20 feet, and your screening of the landscaping's not 20 feet, so that's gonna look kind of ugly, right? So
Yep.
we should talk about, is there anything, I mean, it's actually a cute area. You did a good job with pictures. I drove down there. It's cute, right? And now you're gonna see this wall of some kind of screening.
So I think that's a good question. So during the wintertime, you're going to see it because the foliage is going to be down, and that's why I provided the two seasons. In the summertime, like I said, what we would look to do is fill it with the low-lying brush. So we're basically looking to throw microphones around and then looking to fill the voids. So wherever the tree canopy comes down to a certain height, the goal would be to bring in that brush to cover that. Currently out there, with the way that brush is grown, it was not a pleasant, no offense, Jerry, but it was not a pleasant experience going out into the site to flag the test pit locations. Yeah. It gets pretty dense. Yeah. So we'd be looking to replicate that out at the street to the greatest extent. I mean, the only other thing, you know, these are all well-established deciduous trees. I'm looking at, so when I looked at this site, and as I noted in my narrative, a couple things that could happen here. I know that I have clients that would take this, would look at this, and again, respectfully, Jerry, they'd say, what is that knucklehead doing? Do you know how much money he could make on this thing with a fast food restaurant, a bank, which would be allowed out here, industrial or some other commercial use, which when looking at something like that, it would be much more aggressive. So that's when I look at this, and I do appreciate the comment. And again, like I said, we're making some efforts to kind of just to screen that area so that we can avoid having that, you know, kind of break it up. It's almost like looking at the facade of a building. You know, if you can break it up with landscape architecture, with, you know, some specimen trees, or, you know, be it columnar or a broader spread on a tree, some shrubs, that's what you'd like to do. So that's kind of what we're looking at here.
So is there gonna, can you, I mean, I think
we could go, I'm sorry, we could go with a green screening.
Yeah, I mean,
might
I think we're gonna wanna see, like, to be the most respectful to the neighborhood, right? There's
Absolutely.
literally houses across the
Yep.
street. And, like, we get that you have choices about developing property, but that's why you come here. We're trying to represent the community to get the best possible.
Agreed.
So I feel like we're gonna wanna see kind of what that might look like and the best way to make that.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that you guys have done so far shows that you're willing to make something nice for the neighborhood. But I
So-
think that's going to be particular.
Nice.
So when you're talking about the screening, you're talking about the C 401, where this says the barrier net system, that's the screening?
That's correct.
And that goes all the way around, obviously, the site to keep the soccer balls in?
Oh, so the screening itself, the soccer mesh, if you will, we'll
Yep,
call it
the
mesh,
Yep,
differentiate from
yeah, because I
vegetative.
keep vegetation, yeah.
Yeah, so with the mesh itself, it's going to be 20 feet high, and it's going to go to the far ends of the field. So it won't go around the entire field. The reason we're not doing that is we're going to need to have access to the stormwater basin. And we have a swing gate located along the edge of the fence to the south to allow access to the stormwater basin. The other thing that, and we have the fence, or entering the field, we have.
So which line up there is the screen, like is the mesh screen,
So.
what, is it a solid line, is it a
Yes.
dash line? Is it-
So yeah.
It's
So-
that gray line there that you're pointing to?
Yep,
And there's one on the other side too, I see then?
yep, at the other end of the field.
Okay, and then the long sides,
It's just a regular chain link fence.
but the parking lot side looks like it has that same mesh?
So, no, it doesn't. It actually has, and maybe it's just the scale of the plan, but the parking lot side and the opposite side, so the east side of the fence and the west side of the fence don't have the screening. It's only the north and south side of the fence.
Okay.
Because that's where the errant balls are more likely to go.
Yeah, it's just really hard for me to find a line up there that
Yep.
means mesh, right?
Yep.
So that I can actually understand the design of it?
Yep, so we have it, so on the larger scale plan set, it's much easier to see. But I could get, like I said, I could probably highlight that maybe in a different color, so you folks can see it. One of the,
Because it's not the thing you labeled UGE, right?
no, that's underground electric.
That's under, okay.
Actually, I should touch on that as well.
Is it the, like, jagged edge on?
That's it.
Yeah, okay. So, my question is also about, not to harp on the soccer mesh. But as someone who spent a lot of
Oh, right
time on
there,
soccer
okay.
fields and is likely to spend a lot more on soccer fields,
Yep.
I am wondering about, to Kate's point about the railroad.
Yep.
Obviously, they'll have a special interest in making sure that there are not balls flying onto the tracks. So do we know whether this is acceptable to them in terms of keeping, just the way that the orientation of the field is? Obviously, you've got Pleasant Street where balls are gonna fly, you've got the tracks where balls are gonna fly.
Yep.
And then, you know, anyone who plays soccer knows that this tot lot is right in a corner, errant corner kick. You know, you've got balls
Yep.
potentially flying into that playground. So I'm wondering if the railroad's okay and if there's any way to extend that screening to the playground.
So just to, the reason for the orientation. I played a lot of ball growing up, suffering for it now, but baseball, soccer. So soccer wasn't big when we were kids. But my kids have played soccer. I coach soccer. And there's nothing like a goalie being blinded from an east-west orientation. It's kind of like a baseball field. Playing baseball and then all of a sudden there's a fly ball and you don't see it. Been there, not nice. And so looking at this, we need to go north-south orientation. So I think, yeah, we've got the screening. One of the comments that was raised by town staff on Tuesday, which I thought was a great comment, for that particular reason, corner kick. They asked if we could return the screening, the mesh, up the side of the field, just a distance. So we would probably look to extend that. We're thinking another 20 feet, because by the time you do your corner kick, another 20 feet we feel would suffice. I might actually defer to our good friend Alvaro on that. Seeing that you have that lead foot, typically something like that, based on what you see, you know, not that I want you out there playing soccer with kids, U12, it could be humiliating for you. But at U12, how far, I mean, is another 20 feet up that sideline? Yep. Yep. And so looking at that, that's kind of what we discussed with the town. So there are a couple other things that came up. The deputy chief, fire chief had asked about, which I thought was a good question, was access for an ambulance. So we're going to put a double swing gate out there and dedicate a space for access for the ambulance. So with that said, if we had screening around the entire field, then the ambulance wouldn't be able to get into the field. So, and to Alvaro's point, another 20 feet, as he said, based on his experience, would be sufficient.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of like putting what you need, but not going overboard with it.
Agreed.
Right?
It's almost like sign pollution.
Yes.
You see some folks that put up 50 signs from the stop sign another 100 feet. You know, at some point, it becomes white noise.
Are there any trees that are, there's no existing trees that are retained, is that right? It's being
Other
cleared
than-
and,
Yeah, so other than what's along around the well area, anything that's between the parking lot, the existing parking lot and what we're proposing, we would look to save those trees. And we're looking to try to do whatever we can. So if you look at the entrance, the proposed entrance, between the parking lot, so just to the east of that proposed entrance exit, we've maintained some screening in there. And like I said, we would look to enhance that with some of the shrubbery. And so, Madam Chair, the question was raised about, you know, like I said in the letter, the game plan would be to go out here, once the trees are cut, to go out there and say, okay, so this is what we're looking at. Let's screen this. What do we have to do? And that's basically the approach. And that's why we would have Peter Alvaro, landscape architect, and the owner, and the contractor, so they have an understanding of what we're looking to do. Again, recognizing that there are residences across the street, we are sensitive to that.
yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, I think that I mean, I do see the argument about that this could become something else. right? And I think it's a great thing that it could become a soccer field, something that obviously would be primarily used by the church and the daycare, but would be available to the community as well when it wasn't being used, you know, by the main function. And I think it brings some kind of life to this street too, to have
Does.
the kids there in the soccer
Great.
field. So it's not, the screening isn't about hiding it so that everyone can't see it. It's about just having, you know, that there is this big fence and for lack of a better word, and how do you give that a little bit of color and a little bit of softness?
Sure,
You know, I
sure.
think. I think for, you know, going to, well, I was wondering actually, on the other side, which would be the east side of the field, so the far side, that's where the storm water is draining to. Is there any possibility of any further trees over there, or is that doesn't work with the drainage on that side and the swale? Or does it just make a mess on the field?
So that's interesting because under the state stormwater regs, they don't like to have trees in these basins. In this case, it's interesting because a lot of times we have to deal with, and so the town engineer was involved in the meeting on Tuesday. And I think when he looked at this, and I'm not going to speak for him, but like I said earlier, from a hydrologic perspective, this is the cat's pajamas. In this particular case, we have groundwater recharge, no runoff in volume, no TSS removal, because there's no pavement out there, you know, so we're not taking all that sand and treating that. So it is a gem, but they do require that these basins not be vegetated so that they can be mowed.
Oh, got it, okay.
And I think, again, given the use next door, I think when we cited this and looked at the program that Jerry and his team were looking at, recognizing that the use next door is an industrial use. You know, it's not as if it's a condo development next door. It's an industrial use.
Yeah, no, I wasn't looking for screening for that side. It's almost like just screening for the field itself, that it becomes a,
Yep.
you know, more of a secluded kind of area, and so that you don't see as much the industrial area. It's like screening that,
Yeah,
that from this site.
And so I do appreciate that. And so one of the things that we like to do, and I think you can see it in the way we graded the stormwater system and the creativity that we could have gone with an underground stormwater system, or we could have gone with a rectangular hole in the ground. But one of the benefits, you know, I've had the honor of working with landscape architects since 2000. And prior to that, I had chain link fences around all my basins, and they were just these nasty holes in the ground. And, you know, in working with them, you know, I've come to design these things so that it serves a purpose as stormwater, but it's a site amenity. So you want to design it so that, and then when lid really started to kick in, that was a dream. So when you look at this and you create these things, you want to just create it as part of the landscape. And shape it so that it looks like part of the landscape. So that's why, in this particular case, just a very gentle swale is the way we approached it. So, like I said, you know, looking at it from the soccer field to the east, there'll be some trees there along the property line. Honestly, are there going to be a heck of a lot? No. But there will be some trees retained.
So other questions from the board? Yeah, I mean, I just think with everything we've been kind of dealing with trees, just trying to retain trees, for shade out on the, I'm not a soccer player, but it seems like sometimes you need some shade from all that sun.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I know that it can make the field a mess,
Yep.
right? So there's downsides, sometimes they just don't go together. So I'll leave that question up to others. But is there anything, this needs to go to the design review committee? Right.
Correct, yep.
Who are very in tune to the landscape architecture department, the tone of things. So I would recommend in going that way that, I mean, there was a few questions we had here. I think the railroad question is a question for the planning office, just to see, I mean, it's really a question for the applicant.
Right.
But I think we should look at that and see what they required. I don't think we've had something built along the railroad
Yeah, no,
since
not
I've been
like
here.
this, no.
Yeah. So, so that should be understood. But also I would recommend that, that if you have more information on here or can provide a colored rendering
Okay,
for the design review committee, if that's getting the
Absolutely.
landscape, if that's getting the landscape architect more involved to produce that, so that you really can understand. And I realized I was on the wrong page, which is why I couldn't pick up on where that mesh fence was. But so that you can really pick up where the different, you know, what's green on here, what's gravel, and to use color to help
Sure.
that be a little bit easier. I really appreciate the pictures at the end. It also would be nice to have an aerial, because that's the first thing I did is go to my phone, so I could picture exactly where it was
Yeah.
and what was happening there, and I'm gonna look at it closer when I drive by, but.
so I do appreciate that. So typically what we do, and quite honestly, like I said, I've been absolutely swamped in work, so didn't have a chance to pull something together. But typically when we do something like this, we'll take the aerial. Our landscape architects, when it comes to, we work with Lumion and Photoshop, so we can do three-dimensional flyovers. So we do these views. If you look at our website, in fact, one of the first things that comes up is a car dealership that we've done out in the Boston area. That it shows a view of, just a flyover of the site, and we basically created that with our software. So with respect to the renderings, what we'll do is we'll take Photoshop and Lumion and create renderings that are pretty much lifelike. Bless you. So we insert it, we take the site, drop it into the aerial, and doll it up. It's pretty sweet, so we can do that.
Yeah, and I think
Absolutely.
being able, even if it's, as far as that mesh fence goes, just to be able to, if there's an example from another community or something, so you can just really just understand what that mesh fence looks like, because I know they're not real solid. They're, they're pretty light, right? But having, and they don't look like chain link, or anything like that. So to be able to like just express what that mesh typically looks like would be a nice example.
To add to that, the poles, because the 20-foot fence, essentially the mesh, and 25-foot
Yeah.
pole is big, and we should acknowledge that, and we have been pushing to say the community really gets to see what, instead of the little picture that you can say, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, so I do, so your comment earlier, I do appreciate that. I like that so basically, what you were looking for, if I understand through the chair, was a visual representation from the street that shows what is these trees, these mature trees, what does that look like? What does the filler look like? And what does it look like to throw a mic around? And then what does the mesh look like behind it? That is certainly something we can do.
Yeah, just so that it can, I mean, like, I feel like we're all like composing the image in our heads, but it'd be nice for you to just show us what it is. But
Okay.
I'm excited to see the project. I think it'd be an asset for the community. So,
One image that really comes to mind is when you're on the Worcester line, I think Newton has a ground right along the line, and you see that activity, and it has that tall mesh. So that's a kind of a very good example where the line runs, the rail line runs, and you can actually see the ground. It's actually cool to see that when it's.
can
when
you
it's
get some
dark.
pictures from the train next time you go by?
Do that. It's great for Pleasant Street because it really activates that whole street in some way. So that's a great project.
Yep.
I was gonna echo the same to say, I think one of the things we hear from the community is valuing open space. So I think to your point about this parcel could be many things, and the fact that a soccer field
Yeah.
is going in, I think that's an asset to the community and for Pleasant Street.
And quite honestly, as I've expressed to folks before, I've done this for over 40 years. And there are properties, so when I look at something like this and I know what could go here, I look at that. But I also, quite honestly, I go on to properties and I say, why do they want to do something here? Leave it alone, But I also look at, I need to put food on the table, and I would rather have our firm do it than some hack job do it. and put in 300 units on a half-acre lot with no buffer to the lot line. I figure if we could be involved, at least we can do something a little bit more tasteful. And we like to think green, and I think it's exhibited here.
I was going to say, speaking of green, we do have a sustainability best practices list. I don't know if you were given that. I think a lot of the stuff is covered, and it really isn't meant for this type of project. It's meant for a more typical project. But it would be good for you to review. Like I said, I think you talked about a lot of the things with the lighting and that this is grass, not, artificial turf or something like that. So, and the paving, everything seems to be thinking along those lines. But
Yep.
it would be good to take a look at the list and just see if there's anything else that you either forgot to remark on or that could be incorporated.
Okay?
Can I just make one question here, Wayne? And we can share that list with you. But obviously, I know we talked about conduits, putting the electrifying the field,
Yep.
getting lights in. Is that something that is in the future, or is that going to be with the installation of this development?
So being the knucklehead that I am, Peter, it's on the plans, I just failed to mention it. So it's shown on the plan, so the plan would be coming from the main building. Alvaro, if you wouldn't mind, I hate doing this to you, but if we could go to the utility plan, that has all the bells and whistles. So that came up in our discussion on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And so we're showing, okay, so as you can see here, we have a feed, electrical feed to the field. So the plan would be that we would run the electrical out to the proposed light posts. And then just basically put risers and cap them until they decide to put in the
Okay.
light poles. So that would be the plan there. The other approach, the other thing that we're looking at is the water supply. So that would obviously, because of the situation on the site with the limits of the plume
Yes.
extending onto the property, we would have to draw from the municipal system from the building. So we would be proposing a backflow preventer and a meter. So the meter reader, wherever they typically install that, would be located along with the meter and a backflow preventer. That would go out to an irrigation pit, and that would just sit until the irrigation contractor comes in to do their thing.
All right. Thank you so much for explaining that. But I think with this decision, though, we also need to look at it. We need to think about the future. If lights go in, right, what is the trigger regarding time, right? When do lights go off?
Yep.
Daylight savings time in the fall, obviously, you do have situations where, obviously, the sun's starting to go down earlier, but it's still nice out, people playing soccer. What's the time limit?
Yep.
So I think I would ask you and the applicant to start thinking about that, right? And obviously, there would be something in this decision that said you would have to come back to the planning board, and/or let's iron it out right now, and/or have conversations with the abutters across the street to see what is acceptable, right? Because what's acceptable for the town, what's acceptable for you, and what's acceptable for the abutters, maybe three different things. But I think we have to come to a consensus to find a time frame which works for everybody. And I just kind of want to float that out there tonight rather than float that one out there later, because it is important regarding time, which rolls into the question of noise. Obviously, this is a soccer field; it's not a pickleball court, but you still have to kind of put it on the radar right now.
Good call, Peter.
And before we go any further, there might be last comments from the planning board, but before we do, I'd want to open up for public comment. So if there's anyone in the audience here, or if there's anyone online can raise their hands. And if you have a comment, make sure you make yourself known on there. Forgotten that you were hanging out in cyberspace.
I'm good.
Robin, you can come up to the
I don't know if you need a history, but I'm a pretty long-time resident of this town, all my life. That used to be a Little League field, way back when, so it was cleared, and we played on that field, I don't know how many times. But it was great, it was a great field, it really was. I think this is a great thing that they're doing. Anyway. Oh, I'm sorry, Robin Hicks, 11 Franklin Road. Thank you.
That's a good little bit of history. Thank you.
Mr. Martisoni.
Mark Sony. 119 Main Street, again, history, yes. That was ball field, I was on that field, tried to drink the water and was burning the throat sometimes. Okay, this field and the lighting, the back lighting and the two posts, they'll be tilted down with the LED. And, never mind, I don't have to worry about that at all. And traffic, don't have to worry about that because that's not a big stretch. And it's artificial turf. Well, natural turf, so it's all grass. How much is the town water gonna be used on that? Because it's gonna be used pretty good amount of time, and it's gonna have to be rested and everything. So there's gotta be some sort of tax on the water in this town. And, it's youth, yes or no? Yes. But still, might open up, once the field is open and used, open up for tournaments. Are there gonna be seating arrangement and bench sidelines on this field? That's all I got.
Thank you, Mark. Would the applicant like to address any of those questions?
Thank you. So basically what we're looking at, so the water, typically when we look at something like this for irrigation, it's 1 inch over the 1 inch per week over the surface area. It would be metered by, at the building, and the church would be paying for that water. Secondly, in terms of the, sorry, what was the other one?
Seating
Oh,
for
yeah, the
tournaments.
seating in the benches. We are not proposing, we're not really foreseeing tournament-type play here. We're just seeing, probably practice field type thing. So folks that would attend would stand outside the fence. When I coach my kids, that's basically what happened, and the team would be on the inside of the fence. So that's the approach we're taking.
Right,
And
thank
it's
you.
primarily, like I said, the lot is ancillary to the Connect Church and Metro West. So, should they decide to have these events, the local youth soccer, like I said, it's primarily for these guys.
And that you said that the lot right now is used for overflow parking, so the parking you have there is actually essential, I assume, maintain the parking there is essential to Connect Church as well, that they
That's
have that
correct.
parking.
That's correct. So
Okay.
basically what this is overflow. So interestingly, one of the conversations that came up a couple days ago was that, for Connect Church, it's overflow. Let's say there's a soccer event and folks come to the field for soccer. The overflow parking will be actually Connect Church's parking lot. So we discussed some signage that would need to be posted to accommodate that.
Got it. Any other questions from the board or comments? Then I think we can send this to the design review committee, right? And I would want us to, just in our normal tradition now is to put a memo together for the design review committee. I think in that memo, I see Bill Novakowski, I think, on there, maybe listening in from the design review committee. But I think we would be, the placement of everything seems logical. We obviously had some questions about all the different layers of vegetation and screening, and had some questions about sustainability and things like that, being able to see it from the street. Is there anything otherwise we would want them to weigh in on?
I think we should add signage, just that obviously if it's on their property and it doesn't really affect, but we do have like sign bylaws and stuff, so make sure, we're probably going to want some more details about that before we'd approve it, right?
Right. So, okay, so then I'll assume, since no hands are up online, that no one else wanted to make a comment, but they should feel free to raise their hand if they do. But otherwise, I guess we will, do we need a motion to send this to the design review committee? Do we typically do
Sure, we
that?
can take a motion.
I make a motion to send the 240, 260 Pleasant Street soccer field project to design review committee.
Is there a second?
Second that.
And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Oh,
Sorry.
It's okay. Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Amanda Hayes, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye.
Without Alvaro, without
Marcelo.
Marcelo, I'm totally lost.
Well, yeah, and Anna's floating up there. We forget she's there, and so it's very confusing for us all. We're out of our rhythm. Okay, so we will be sending this to Design Review Committee. I don't know when they meet next.
So their next meeting is actually April 1st,
Okay.
Okay.
okay?
And if, since Alvaro kind of is the connection to the Design Review Committee, if you can kind of coordinate what they are typically looking for so that they can provide those images and make the process as smooth as possible to focus
Be
then on
great.
the questions.
Beautiful. If you
All
could
right.
get me an email, that'd be great. And then we can, sooner the better. That way we can get stuff to you folks earlier. You can take a peek at it, and if we need to add anything else, want to make everybody happy.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Just as a note, that would bring it back to the planning board on April 10th.
If everything is, I guess we have to continue it to something.
Yeah,
is
we
that
have
what
to
I mean?
continue to a
Okay,
date
okay.
certain, so I think it makes sense to continue it to April 10th, and obviously see how it goes, design review on the 1st, and hopefully there's enough time to
Okay.
prep and turn it around and continue to kick the ball down the road.
All right,
Nicely done.
then I will make a motion that we continue this
Can I
project.
say
Oh,
just-
sure.
I'm just looking at the checklist we have, like, are we going to need, like, a traffic study or anything for the third-party stuff?
I'm gonna say no. I don't think we need to. They did pay for a consultant review fund. I am going to send the plan to GCG, just have them take a preliminary look at it. Obviously, it's a fairly simple plan. Obviously, it's a lot of catch basins, there's a couple catch basins. Most of the grading is done with the field. But no, my opinion is that no traffic review needs to be done here.
It's not required, is it?
No.
I mean, given I think the major part of the traffic is getting in and out of Connect Church probably on the
Yeah,
weekend
no,
versus
I'm
the
just
soccer
looking,
field.
so it is at GCG now?
Yeah, so I'm gonna work with GCG and they're gonna take a look at it. But as we've kind of spoken, it's not a very complicated site, per se.
Along with that too, I think that was one of the things I cited in the report, that if you had loading docks and you had vehicles coming at various times of the day and the lighting, it's a nightmare. So this one, like Peter had said, it's fairly lightweight. The delta in parking spaces is 19. Really not much of an increase.
Okay, anything else before we? Okay. I think I can do this. I'll just make a motion to continue this until April 10th. Is there a second?
Second that.
And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Amanda Hayes, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So that's April 10th, and Design Review Committee before that.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Have a happy St. Patrick's Day. Thank
too.
you, folks.
All right. Next on our agenda, our proposed bylaw changes. We're having this meeting in tandem, we're creating a forum for the bylaw changes that the planning board that are on the warrant already? No, we'll be getting on the warrant for Springtown meeting.
Correct, they'll be submitted to the warrant.
So we need to review them ourselves, but maybe our big audience will be tuning in shortly. So three bylaws. The first one is the update to the floodplain overlay district. I think everyone, that's what should be in the binders, right? The updated. Okay, so I'll skip that first part. That's the design review. Overlay, and then floodplain is after that. So I think this was sent out on Friday, and then I went through it, but really was just formatting, getting everything to line up pretty, as I like to do. And there were a few things that I questioned if we needed. Sometimes there were little labels on things like State 10 or something like that, and those were just indicators of where it had come from the state's original document, and really shouldn't be in the bylaws, right? Yeah. So I was just taking those things out, kind of cleaning it up. I also had some questions, and I think we talked about this a little bit with Becca, on the definitions of the flood zones. There's a whole bunch of definitions here, and the state, I think, says, hey, take out the ones that don't apply to you. And I think we were wondering if it was better to keep them in, or take them out, or
Yeah, I
just
think,
keep them all in, or, I couldn't really come to a conclusion on that. That's under letter Q. And I think the question we were kind of debating on last time was about the exclusion for the MBTA as it's in the floodplain, but after review with Lisa, it doesn't even need that because the MBTA is already excused from things like floodplains. So,
Thank you for that. I feel like that also makes sense with our like existential question as to how they could be like conflicting. So that's
Yeah.
That's a relief. I was relieved when I saw that note from Lisa.
yeah, well, it's the only reason it's in the special, the sensitive land is because it's in the floodplain. It's not like there's any, endangered species on that lot, so. So this is obviously our, kind of just our review of it. It's not, when by our calendar do we need to have it? We need to have the final language to publish it, right?
But we're sending it, like after today, we'll send it to, Lisa already had taken a look at it, but we can send it to her and to the assistant town manager, and then on April 4th is when we actually are sending it into the newspaper.
So we have one more meeting, or no?
yes.
We have one more meeting between now and then, before we send it in, where then it cannot be changed. Okay. Thank you.
Trisha, your no comment on that definition ones, because I saw that, and on the previous page, I caught that under K, we are referencing the other zones that got canceled out.
Yeah, you know what I did is that, there was a note that's on here that says that,
I can put it on the screen, Tricia, the one that, like the working draft, so
Yeah.
we can look at the.
it's a note that says, maybe it's at the beginning here, yeah, definitions, this is way up where in definitions. Definitions, if the definition is from the Massachusetts Building Code, it is from the 9th edition, which meets the minimum standards of the NFIP. So wherever it said base code, I went back and looked at both both the version 9 and the 9th edition and the 10th edition base code, which was either the 2015 or the 2021 building code, to see why they would say that. And so there are parts of this, the whole start of construction thing on L is not in the 10th edition, but it is in the 9th edition. So it's interesting why they, obviously this started before the 10th edition, and that definition isn't in there anymore, which is interesting. So I thought, well, maybe with this base code, I went back and the base code does list all these things. So to keep it absolutely consistent with the base code, I put them back in.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, and then the other definitions are there. We could someday have to have those definitions, like things could change and we may have those definitions. Is that possible?
Yeah, you want to like update the bylaw, do you mean?
I mean, is it potential that someday we could have a Zone V? Or not really, that's along a coast.
That will be, yeah, I think that like, well, that will be first a Becca question.
Okay,
But I guess the geography will have to change a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a coastal, those are coastal definitions, and so when you read the state, obviously, template, the zone Vs are actually, they're velocity zones. It's
Okay.
when you talk about V, you're talking about velocity zones, you're talking about wave action. That's what you're actually talking about.
So in no sense, it doesn't help in keeping them here
No.
as well. Lose them. Yeah.
No.
So that's why I'm wondering, should we just take out
Yeah.
things that just do not matter?
The A130 has a similar story.
I don't know what the A130 is, but yeah, it wasn't in Ashland. So, and we can have Becca explain that to us.
I can get a better definition on the velocity zones, and what they are and kind of what they mean from a definition standpoint. But like, if you're a coastal zone, town of Situate, they have velocity zones, right? And it makes sense, right? Wave action, height, crashing waves, rising tides. But we can bring those to the meeting on the 27th and just to kind of go over them, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, for me, it's just a matter of, does it clutter up the bylaw or make it more clear? That's what I'm, and I
Yeah.
can't quite figure it out.
You know, looking at the that states the template, they says, okay, V in red, if applicable, keep these in. You know, sand dunes, keep these in, right? We don't have sand dunes in Ashland.
Right.
You know, we don't have velocity zones, so does it clutter it up? Or is it more streamlined?
It's not applicable to the rivers stuff,
Correct.
only for.
Yeah. So, and if something does happen in the future, and we do have velocity zones, right, that's gonna come with another update to a FEMA map, which is, we're also gonna have to go back and edit this bylaw. And so,
Bring it back.
you can bring it back at that point if you would like to, but obviously it's the board's call.
And then the other thing where I think we kind of, I don't remember if we needed more information on it, was the 8.1.9 recreational vehicles, about that if you're going to be placing them on in an A or an E, and I'm not sure where those are, the A and E are, they have to be elevated and anchored. And what does elevated mean? You know, like,
I think what Lisa told me for that one was that they come from the FEMA regulations. So if anything, you should go back to it. So there was no need for defining it within the bylaw. That was the comment that I got.
we need to define it within the bylaw, but would that mean that someone with a recreational vehicle would need to follow whatever was there? Like
On the, yeah.
someone who owns one right now? Then we should, if that's not in our bylaw now, we should kind of understand what that is, I think, like what.
So our bylaw does have a recreational vehicle component to this.
Oh, it's already there.
Well, a recreational vehicle is already defined. What is a recreational vehicle? Is a Winnebago.
Right, but I mean,
camper.
what you have to do to it.
Okay.
Is that already defined?
I would have to double check.
Yeah, and so if it's not, we should, what do
And
we,
since there is a definition of recreational vehicle here, we should make sure it lines up with the one we have in our definitions.
think-
Probably.
It does. I think we
does.
checked it. We
Okay.
checked into that. Because I emailed the state, what is a recreational vehicle? It's this, that, and looking at our bylaw, and they do match up. Because it's not a car, it's not a truck, it is it's a camper. Yes. RV. Yeah.
and actually, the definition for that is already in this bylaw. So if it's outside of the bylaw, it wouldn't count. It's part of the cleaning up. I'm not even sure we define it outside of the bylaw. Do you know if our definition of recreational vehicle is already inside of this bylaw?
No, it's actually in our bylaws. It's in section 10 of the
It's inside,
bylaws.
okay,
Yeah,
right,
it's in
okay.
section 10 of the bylaws. So in theory, we could strike that because recreational vehicles could live right in this bylaw. I think this is the only reference to recreational vehicles is this floodplain overlay
Yeah, so I guess that's the only question, that's really the only question I had, is those kind of clarifications on what should be in and what should be out with our various flood zones and this thing about recreational vehicles, because I still don't understand what it is people are being asked to do. And if the cure is worse than the disease, you know,
And your
kind of
question
thing.
is more about that, which asks about elevated and anchored. What does that really mean?
Yeah, it like, does it, okay, so it needs to go back to to the floodplain, but does that mean
Yeah.
all vehicles need to be on a 10-foot plinth? Well, we probably wouldn't want that. you
Yeah.
know? So I just don't know what that means.
I agree, and I think, I'm happy to call the state, I'm happy to send the email out, does it, and I think I'm understanding, does it need to be on jack stands, right?
Yeah, what is,
What's elevated
Yeah.
mean, right?
Yeah.
What do you have to do, and what's anchored, quote unquote, right? Is this I'm not gonna start throwing out theoretical.
like, how onerous is this?
Correct.
You know, and how,
Yeah, something that we can help somebody reading it, trying to understand instead of having to look at 5 different.
Yeah, anchor is a question, right? Is it chain? Do you,
yeah,
not to joke around, but is it a boat anchor? Like,
yeah.
what is it?
So we'll look into that.
I wish we could always have graphics for all this. So much. And reading pages and pages,
You're such a visual person.
right?
So I would say also, I would say that definition or that explanation, and to ask Emma again, because I know I had her explain this to me before, but about those zones and kind of her take on, is it good to just keep it in, or no, it's just cluttering up our bylaw, right? To have these things that we'll never deal with, It'd be great to have her input on that. And if there's any questions from the audience, either live or online, please just raise your hand. Related to the floodplain bylaw at this
Yep.
point.
It is Martha Sony, 5119 Main Street. My first question is going to frame on, hopefully it's not going to change, is for the floodplain overlay special district, is that the same for planning board and zoning, or just planning board?
It's for the zone, it's a overlay district within the bylaws. And this is a FEMA provided map, right? They're FEMA provided layers. We already have accepted the previous FEMA floodplain, which was last updated in 2010. And so FEMA is updating the Charles River watershed floodways. And so we have 2 areas in town, all of FEMA's overlay districts for the state of Massachusetts, for the region, are broken up into tiles, right? And so 2 tiles are part of the Charles River the Charles River watershed. And so we are adopting the 2 new tiles that are within the Charles River watershed. And then with that, FEMA is updating the regulations regarding the overlay districts. And so we are updating our bylaws in addition to adopting 2 new tiles, quote unquote, which is an update to the Charles River watershed district.
Okay,
It's complicated stuff.
apparently so, and,
Yeah, it's, I would probably say 90% of the town lies in the Sudbury, Assabet, Concord River watershed. And about 10% of the town falls within the Charles River watershed.
and does our regulations have any say about it?
Well, these are our regulations, but our regulations already came from the FEMA state, the flood zone and the state sample bylaw, and so we are updating that.
What does that do to our overlay special district regulations now.
Well, it updates the regulations.
So if I ask questions from what I have from the page,
Mhm.
can I ask them in the paragraphs in which they are in?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Is the purpose still going to be the same as the protect of the public health, safety, and general? All that's going to be all set?
I can say this, the purpose of the floodplain overlay district is to ensure public safety, reducing the threats of life and personal injury. Number 2, eliminate new hazards to emergency response officials. Number 3, to prevent of public emergencies resulting in water quality, contamination, or pollutants due to flooding. Number 4, avoid the loss of utility services, which, if damaged by flood, would disrupt and shut down the utility network and impact regions of the community beyond the site of flooding. Number 5, eliminate costs associated with the response and cleanup of flooding conditions. And number 6, reduce the damages to public and private property resulting from flooding waters.
Oh, that's kind of way different than what I have.
Because this is the updated state bylaws, which we're working into. Our bylaws, our existing bylaws are old. The last time they were updated was 2010.
So what I have is the ode.
Mm-hmm.
So can I give this to you?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing that we're trying to do here, Mark, is we're trying to reformat the bylaw, because this bylaw, it's all squished together. So I can read, the purpose of the existing bylaw is the purpose of the floodplain overlay district is to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare, to protect human life and property from the hazards of periodic flooding, to preserve the natural flood control characteristics of the flood storage capacity of the floodplain, and to preserve and maintain the groundwater table and water recharge area within the floodplain. In my eyes, that's very similar to the 6 bullet points that within our proposed purpose. And I assume, and with my knowledge, that this probably came from the state back in 2010, and our proposal is going to be from the state in 2010.
So I really don't have to ask it out loud because it's actually, in a sense, being done.
Correct.
And I know you got the other ones too coming. I got become for the site plan, the next one too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, I don't see any other comments or any comments from the board on this one. So it'll be on our agenda next time, and it'll be the final time we have to make any changes or comment on it before it goes to warrant.
Are these on the website?
I think there were links to them in the, where did the link, weren't they links to them in the newsletter?
Not on the website. I do not recall exactly what I said. I think I gave, no, the links that were sent, it was all the information of the regulations that the state has provided us to update it. The bylaws updated itself, they're not on the website.
Okay. We can certainly put them up on the website.
I
the
mean, I
drafts.
think the more ways people have before town meeting to read through, right?
Yeah, so why don't we put all 3 of them
There's
up
still
together?
time for people
Yeah.
to email comments.
Yeah.
That's no problem. We can take care of that. I think this week, we're still kind of working through them, so I think it's, after this meeting, it's appropriate to do that.
I think I can put like a watermark that says draft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't confuse that,
Yep.
and you can be leaving the website just like on top of it.
So then on the 27th will be our final wording, and then it'll be sent out and done. Okay. So I think it's just really tweaks at this point. Is everyone okay if we go on to the next one, the ADUs? Okay. So the only thing missing from this right now, again, went through formatting, looking for any little tweaks, but we need to add some of the definitions onto this. because it gets a little specific with protected use ADU, and then protected use ADU, and then primary dwelling unit and dwelling unit.
Yep.
And it's a little bit repetitive, frankly, but until we have those things outside of the bylaw, sitting in the definitions, we should probably have it inside the bylaw at least. And I'm a little leery about putting it outside the bylaw until we've read through the rest of the bylaws, so that we're not changing the definition of another bylaw by putting a definition in. So,
That makes
Would it
sense.
contradict in case, because if you don't go through the original one, and then you have another set of definitions inside here?
It can live,
It says for the I think it says for the purpose of this bylaw. in the
Yeah, so-
definition section, it
so if
just
you're doing an
equals-
ADU, this is the this is the definition you have to use. For instance, like the gross floor area is defined differently in our definitions. It's defined as the outside. Here it's defined by the inside wall, which is a difference in square feet. But I don't think we should change that one, because we don't know if that's also related to other things besides ADU, right? So we could be changing we could be changing something in another part of the bylaws that we're not aware of.
Yeah, and this definition, 7.6.7 does say, like, it's clear. It's
Yeah.
contained. Yeah.
So there's some other definitions like that. Like I said, I was kind of naming them. It was a short list. There's a lot of definitions that came with this thing that we don't need. But just things that are mentioned in here, like I said, they can live in here nicely until we really start weeding through and decide. My goal is to be able to take all the definitions out of these bylaws and stick it at the end, and they all mean the same thing for every single bylaw we have. But I can't guarantee that that's true right now. So I'm a little leery about pulling them out.
I mean, I can start, I think it's in great shape.
Should the definitions come up front, though?
I was gonna say that, maybe like
Because the
on
other bylaws we have.
couple
it
of
up front.
bylaws that we've done
Yeah.
is being purpose and then definition, so it's
Yeah.
very clear as you move into reading it.
I think that makes sense, yep. So that would be at 7.6.2, after the purpose. We'll put definitions. Is that where it is for, it's number 2 on the list for the flood overlay? Yeah,
It is, yeah.
okay. Yep, we'll do that.
I have some comments, if anyone else.
Yep, go ahead, Kate.
So I'm going to start with one on the parking, because I actually got contacted by a constituent who's not available to come to the meeting, that the 1 mile, they would like to see the 1 mile, and it was a very thoughtful over, like, we're asking school children to go a mile. So that's the state law, actually. School children with backpacks and musical instruments and sports stuff that's kind of the rule, a mile. And so it kind of made sense. So I know that the board beat it up, but I promised that I would represent someone who asked who can't make the meeting. So maybe when we get to that, it makes sense in some ways to line up. I mean, we're sort of lining up the same thinking. And that is the state law, right? You're a mile from the school or a mile from a bus stop, right? That's, you don't get services, or you have to pay more, so. And then if I go back to 7.6.3, so it looks like stuff was added that we didn't really talk about, but I'll start at the top. So the accessory dwelling unit shall be designed to maintain the appearance and essential character of a one-family dwelling. And I started thinking about that, like the ADU can be on your garage, it can be independent, so like it really doesn't make sense to say that. I think there's maybe some intent behind it, but we kind of started out the whole process saying we weren't going to be design heavy.
Yeah.
And that absolutely doesn't work with the way the bylaw, what's allowed. So I think we have to talk about that. The 7.6.3.
Can you, let's just tackle these one at a
Okay.
time, because we're going to forget
Sure.
the list. So can we go back to the parking one?
Parking, I had a thought on the parking. I mean, I think when we looked at the when we looked at the map that was like the stark visual for me, and I think the mile was so much of town and so much area where it just didn't make sense to be expecting people to walk. And to sort of respond to the school comment, again, I think that is a state rule, and I think, I've actually had people approach me, not understanding that the planning board has no control over that type of a thing. And I'm in this situation with Warren Elementary, and it's all it does is create traffic, right? Like, we are in the car with those kids versus, like, there's not sidewalks to walk with them. Like, it's not walkable for me to Warren School, no matter what. So no matter how nice the weather is, I am within the area where we pay for bus for my daughter, but on days when she misses the bus or the bus doesn't work or the baby's sleeping in the car, we drive to school drop off, and that is a very traffic heavy experience.
Well, to be honest,
over
that's
on
exactly
Street.
the other part of the conversation that I said I'm not bringing in because it's not, but that is
Yeah,
the follow-up
it's-
of why.
It is, and for me, I think, anyone who is in a school drop-off line, I think could attest the 1 mile thing in a town like ours, I think is, all that it is doing is putting people in the car with.
So you're saying it should be a half mile?
Exactly. Sorry, yes.
Yeah,
Thank
so-
you for that, Tricia. Yes, I'm saying I stick by the half mile for the same reason that the mile for school children, I think, doesn't work in our town, just puts people, it just makes traffic worse. I think, again, expecting that people don't have a parking spot available for anyone within the mile is going to create problems. I think the half mile is the right.
My
Compromise.
problem with like going more than the half mile is that, which is different than the kids walking to school thing, is that most people are going to have at least one car. Some people don't. But then where does the car go? It goes on the street, and so now you have a car with no place to park except on the street. And, yeah, and I'm not sure that's a good idea.
I agree with that, and I think having the expectation that people are going to walk or not use a car or not need a car, and therefore there doesn't need to be a parking spot provided to them in that extra additional half mile radius beyond what the state's mandating us to have, I think it's just asking for trouble and asking for more problems. And as it speaks to the school and the bus thing, I think that in itself is flawed. So I don't think mirroring it makes sense in this instance.
No, it was your conversation, and I'll be honest, the other part of it was saying that will help us get sidewalks to fix the problem. Like, if we marry these two up, now it's a bigger thing to be tackled, and reasonably. But I'm representing some of that conversation. The board kind of said we can let that go, and I think it's a fair conversation to say that we did have it. But I also want to just say, it doesn't say they can't build it. It just doesn't require it. And the trend, we all know the trend is to say eliminate parking, and I'm not saying that Ashland's ready for that because we don't have good infrastructure. But it's chicken and egg, right? If you want your community to improve with transportation and sidewalks. Anyway, okay.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think having the accessibility conversation is, I think it is chicken and egg.
Yeah.
For sure. I personally am still on that half mile.
I'm just getting out my little half mile diagram.
I don't know, I was hoping people would be here to participate, but people do watch and write in later, so they may, and maybe I would be surprised if someone said increase it because of the issues of parking, but it's sort of how you solve it is doing something, unfortunately. But anyway, so 7.6.3.
Okay, so that's the next one.
Well, that was the one that I said the accessory dwelling unit shall be designed to maintain the appearance and essential character of a one-family dwelling.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put one in my garage. Well, that doesn't appear like a one-family dwelling. And I'm going to put it in my backyard, which I'm allowed to do separate from my dwelling. And that is not the appearance of a single-family dwelling. So it's starting out like a flawed description.
Yeah, I think it is. What's that?
We had talked about this one last time. I feel like we're back and forth on it.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think it's hard to, yeah, I think too, it doesn't, I can design a house, say I'm designing a house for a brother and a sister, or even a husband and wife, that they have different tastes. I can design a house that looks like two different houses, and I am
Yeah.
allowed to do that. And there's nothing anyone can do to stop me. Right? So, so if I can do that, we aren't supposed to have anything with an ADU that makes it more difficult than building a house. And so I think that is, it is, I think it might be contrary to what it's saying, that if you want to have something that looks like a house and a barn, or it looks like two little houses, but you can do that with a single-family house. There's nothing stopping you.
And just like that letter that talks about the water meter, instead of shall, should we say recommended?
I think that's in there already, isn't
It
it?
says shall.
shall.
Oh, it is shall. Okay, we
Design.
should change it then.
Yeah,
I mean, I think when we talked about this last meeting, I feel like we were kind of split. And when we talked about the recommendation, the worry was, we try to be pretty precise, and should we have it in at all if it's a recommendation? And, because then it just needs to be building code or not. And I feel like if we keep coming back to it and we're worried that it might not pass muster for the intent, like, let's just remove it.
well, I think paying attention to design, I don't know, we don't want to put heavy conditions on it, but being thoughtful, because you probably have a neighbor who's 10 feet away from this accessory unit. And how that unit looks may affect that property in some way, right? That you don't want to have a large box right about 5, because we've reduced that setback
Hopefully not.
limitations, right? So it's the other side of the story. So we can't enforce it, but I think it's more a recommendation or maybe something instead of shall.
I agree with you, Deepa. I definitely, the last time we talked about it was on the side of leaving
Yeah.
it in, because I
Yeah.
think the example I gave was like, I think I've seen some that are like meant to look like something out of
Yeah.
The Hobbit or something like that,
Yeah.
that like could upset, or you could imagine someone
Yeah.
is gonna build, an ADU that is, looks like
Just functional
a
and
spaceship
not
or
pretty.
something. Yeah, exactly. And so I think I come on the end, and last time we talked about it, I said like I like leaving it in, but if we're worried about it and we keep coming back to it. If I'm the only one that feels that way, I feel like we should.
Well, so I
pull it
don't,
out.
I think I don't even know if we would agree, like, what's the essential character of a one-family dwelling? Like, if that's not somewhat defined, this cannot be in there as written.
Yeah, I kind of,
It's just not gonna work.
I kind of agree, because I know people who, that, I know people who love modern architecture, and I know people who hate modern architecture. And, which one is the essential character of a one-family
Exactly.
dwelling? One looks like a box sometimes, and one looks like a cute little gable, so which,
So maybe we should take it out for now.
I have to,
And
just
see,
to
yeah.
add, I remember in Alaska, and there was this like old house right next to a modern, and I'm like, oh my God, that's me and my brother. Like, we could live there, right?
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
know which one I'd be living in. But yeah, they're literally right next to each other, right?
Yeah.
And so we
so
cannot.
it's too subjective, and like I said, the state mandate does say that you cannot make the ADU more difficult than building a home.
So we just take that sentence off,
I think we would just take that,
the full sentence off and let I think we just try to explain what that is.
yeah, I think we take that off, but also, instead of exterior appearance and size, I think it should be something like,
Scale.
yeah, maybe scale and, or, trying to think how I do like that, having the staircase thing in there. Because that, I think, is no matter what style you have, what I fear is these exterior staircases, fire escapes, going down fronts of buildings. So, unenclosed, just, so I'm leery about that, so. Like
I
someone,
leave it as is, it doesn't, it's not, I
to
mean,
leave exterior
yeah, because I
experience
think
and
the
size.
facade, the front, the note 3 as well addresses the front facade of the dwelling.
But just to that same point, right? So you're 10 feet from the property line, and I thought we agreed we were going with the regular setback, so I don't know how we got 5 feet somewhere else. So let's just say it's 10 feet, right? So now you're saying the 10 feet, but you're butted, like in my neighborhood, there's a house right there, and now I have to, like, I don't, you're just making, it's pushing it to a different neighbor to look at the
Wait,
ugly
so are
staircase.
we taking out the essential character thing, right? We've agreed on that, to take out the essential character?
Yeah.
In the first, right,
Yeah,
Kate?
I
Yeah,
think
okay.
so.
At scale?
No, I think we're just saying, we're leaving the exterior experience and size, but
Subject
taking
to
out that
further-
sentence, oh, yeah.
Subject.
No, I think it's just a colon at the exterior appearance and size, colon, and then we get rid of that whole sentence.
Yeah, so
So now you're
7.6.3.1 is the state law, and you
Okay,
might as
yep.
well repeat it. It's nice to have it there. They don't have to look it up, right?
Yeah, and so it did,
But 7.3.2
yeah.
is not in keeping with the setbacks, and we definitively said we're going with the regular setback.
Yeah, did
So
that come out of,
So Lisa added that.
and what's the,
The regulations
I
are,
think that 5 feet is defined.
it's defined in state law.
is that part of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I did not
I
add
feel
that,
like
Lisa
I read
added
that
that.
number somewhere.
So is that just something we missed out of the state law that needed to be in there?
But it's
Okay.
only on a lot that's 10,000
Yeah.
square feet or less.
Well, it's
Okay.
making so people that have
That's
10,000
small
square feet or
lots.
less, that they can fit an ADU on when bigger lots can do it easily.
Yeah.
So they're not excluded.
Yeah, it's the same kind of
That makes sense.
regulate, in the rules and regulations per se, as an example, is that, say you have a rear setback of 30 feet, right, from your rear setback line. However, if your bylaw, which there are many bylaws, including ours, is say you can have accessory structures such as a shed 10 feet from your property line. So the state law also notes that really you take into account whatever is leased, right? Whatever is there. So if you towns do have a setback of 10 feet for a shed, the accessory structure could be 10 feet from the property.
Is that the,
And we do too, it's like 10
Correct.
feet, so.
This is the one, Alvaro has the updated
so that 5 feet and the 10,000 square feet and the 5 feet is coming right from the state regulations? Like we have to have it in there or else?
small lot dimensions.
Yep.
And we'll make sure to look this, but it says, yes, a protected ADU on a lot of not more than 10,000 square feet shall be subject to no more than a 5-foot setback, a 5-foot side and rear setback, a 5-foot separation between the detached structures, and the separation shall be exempt from any requirements relative to the floor area ratio, lot coverage, and/or open space.
So does that mean you can make it as big as you want because it's exempt from the floor area ratio?
No, it's 900 square feet.
No, but when you do a floor area ratio over the whole property.
Oh,
Yes, when you're looking at, yes, when you're doing the whole property, as Trish said.
Okay.
I think that 7.635, the extent possible exterior access ways shall not detract from the single-family appearance of the property. Again, those are just so subjective that
Yeah, I don't really even get what that one means.
we
in a
will just
way.
get ourselves in
need that?
trouble.
What's an access way? So, yeah, I could do without 5. Unless anyone. Peter, didn't you?
No.
That might have just been in there from,
Yeah,
Some-
I know we
from-
talked about last
Yeah.
time. Remember, I pulled up that picture of a access way going up to a 3rd story. It was right in someone's front yard.
wasn't that, I thought that was about the stairway.
That's
Stairway.
4.
Okay.
Yes, that's 4 that we, that's the one too I'm kind of want to keep in there because I can just see these
Yep.
3rd floor apartments with these stairs right out the window, basically.
Yeah, no,
And not everything should become an ADU.
I can take 5 out. That's not a big deal.
Driveways, obviously, is good. And so where does the, where does the shall or is recommended Where does that go
Water
in?
Department?
sewage?
Correct.
So it should read,
are recommended to have a separate water meter from the.
okay, so it is already there. Okay.
Then I put there the email that.
There was an
Dan
email from
responded
Dan
us.
Mauer.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were looking at that. So, okay, it's already in there.
Mhm.
And then, like I said, well, those definitions, we'll beef that up, yeah. So with the nonconformities, and there's so many nonconformities, the nonconformities bylaws apply, but you can't deny the special permit just because of the ADU use.
Mhm.
Right, you can't. You can look at the nonconformities, but you can't lay it on the ADU that they can't.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and/or impose conditions of such.
Right.
Yep.
Anything else on that one? Done a little bit more chopping on it.
So that's an interesting way that 7.6.8, because like, we impose conditions, we said it can't be a short-term rental. But now you're saying if it's a pre-existing non-conforming special permit, we can't impose conditions? Is that what it's saying? Like, I don't get that. Well, I mean, the way it's written, it just says, in the event special permit is required, no such special permit may consider the ADU or impose conditions on its use. But a condition of use in our earlier part is no short-term
Yeah, because I think what
This is
what
just-
you're speaking to is a dimensional special
Yeah.
permit, right? And so when you do a non-conforming
Yeah.
dimensional special permit, the one number one finding that the zoning board has to make, right, is that the proposal is found not to be detrimental to the existing area.
So can we add that dimensional word in?
Or impose dimensional conditions on such use? Or,
Just to be clear? Because now special permit is a very generic. Or we define nonconformity somewhere.
yeah, I agree that the language is a little weird. Can we ask,
Yeah, I can bring it up to Lisa.
and our concern about that it might kick in with the rental?
Oh, yes.
You know, that's,
The short term.
yeah, like, because it's just imposed condition, we can't impose conditions on the use. Well, I'm gonna use it as a short term. You said
But
you can't.
also, you can't use it as a short term up in the,
I think it's deepest point though, like if this is only relating to nonconformities, so I think if we define nonconformities, that helps it.
But there's a whole section of the bylaw on nonconformities.
Yeah, I think that's why it's referring to the requirements of section 3.3 of the zoning bylaw.
which is a non-conformity.
It's just, the
We don't-
language is a little, that doesn't make sense to lay ears, I should
Mhm.
say. So, yeah,
Can we
so,
just get rid of the imposed conditions on such use, just say may consider the ADU use, isn't that the upshot, that we can't deny just because it's an ADU?
yeah, I guess is it a question that, is it just about,
I think it's about the use.
yeah, it's that last part, or impose conditions on such use, that's what we don't understand. We could put a period right on
After ADU.
ADU use, but why do we need the second part, I guess is
Okay.
the question for Lisa, that we don't understand. What does that mean?
Okay, we can ask a question. It's not a big deal.
That's what makes more sense.
All right, good question there. Anything else on that one? There's no questions online? No questions?
Oh, Mark DeSoni.
was it the third time? Mark Tassoni, 119 Main Street. Can somebody read me tonight's agenda sheet and read the paragraph for this ADU? What it says for the introduction?
It says, number 5, item number 5 on tonight's agenda is proposed zoning bylaw changes for the May 2025 town meeting. There's 3 bullet points listed. This one says, discussion of ancillary dwelling units, chapter 8 of 150 of the Acts of 2024 of the Mass General Law allows ADU no greater than 9,000 square feet to be built by right in a single-family zoning district.
900.
900, that's what I said. Did I say 9,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
Quite the.
Lord.
How big of a
Make that
town
look
do you
small.
want? Okay, now the reason why I'm asking that is, what you just read from, is there a bylaw in our bylaws about that?
So we have a bylaw about accessory dwellings. That used to be a special permit that went through the zoning board of appeals. However, with the acts of 2024, which was passed this past summer, which was a huge sweeping housing bill, that pretty much transformed accessory dwelling units to be by right. And that's forced all communities in the state to abandon their current and/or existing bylaws that required special permits. Most communities made them allowed them via special permit. And now it's pushed communities to adopt new bylaws outlining regulations regarding accessory dwelling units and the development of accessory dwelling units.
So because it's not a bylaw, how would people know what to talk about if they came up here?
Well, Mark, I myself and Alvaro are here every day, and we're always happy to talk to the citizens of Ashland that are interested in this subject.
So I was thinking of saying it this way, I am gonna say this, like an old-time Western gunfight, I came up here shooting blanks.
All right, so has everyone done any comments on that bylaw? All right, so the last one is at the beginning of the 3 bylaws. It's really just the first part, well, it's really just number 3, but I put in the other information on this sheet just so it was easy to discuss, like this is all the material. The 9.4.5 is like, that's our current bylaw, we're looking to change the things in number 3. And for reference, I looked up the actual Mass General Law. The bolded part is where it says special permit is 65 days from the filing of the application. So we're trying to go from 30 to 65, just because when we have a special permit and a site plan review, so that they can go hand in hand and not have one on one calendar and one on the other calendar. The way we're stating this right now is 65 days of receipt of an application. And then in the state, it says from the filing of the application. That's the same thing, right? They're received and filed on the same day.
Whatever it's,
Okay.
it really, it goes to the date that application is filed with the town clerk.
So they hand it to them, she stamps it in. so
Correct.
Done. Okay.
Yep, 100%.
So I have a question about that, but it's a state law, and I didn't really think about it. So someone can file an application, but it's not complete. And I know we have a bylaw that gives a review period,
Yeah,
right?
so in Ashland, what happens is the town clerk does not just stamp an application. The town clerk will send them up here to the planning office. Alvaro and I will look at the material, and then typically we have 3 days to stamp that in and/or notify the applicant via certified mail. That's how it always goes, right, by certified mail. Now it's just typically normally email, that their application was not fulfilled, right? And so, if we review it and all the materials are there, we'll stamp it in with the town clerk. Now, if there's something missing, we call them up and say, hey, you're missing this, can you please get it in? Of course, they get it in. That's just kind of courteous, being, relationship.
Okay, so the date of filing is the date the
Correct, the
town
date of the
clerk
town
stamps,
clerk stamp.
not when I filed it with the
Nope.
date I put on the
It's the
application.
date of the town clerk stamp. And typically, if I get something, I file it the next day, I
Yep.
scan it, I send it to the applicant. Hey, application's in, clock starting.
Yep.
Here you go.
Cool, okay, thank you.
So, and then I just, in looking up those things, I was just making note that there are two, and I have no idea how quickly bills move through anything, but there are two separate bills right now, and I've listed them there, that look like they're trying to kind of define more the site review process. You know, which now the site review process isn't even in the Mass State law. That's just something communities do. It's just special permits that are in there, right?
Yeah, the only thing that's
So-
in Mass State law is special permits.
Yeah.
The regulations of the planning board, special permits. What lives at the local level is site plan review. So it would, depending on the community, every community site plan review processes are different. Many of them have, they all have obviously the same common themes. But yes, they do not live at the state level. You will not find the term site plan review in chapter 40A.
Yeah, so I just thought that was interesting, and I got the sense in just looking through them very briefly, not being an expert in this, but it seemed like they were trying to make them go more smoothly, because I think you hear about that throughout communities, that everything gets bogged down in the process. So it seemed like they were trying to regulate things to make that process go, have more control of it, make it go more smoothly. So I put those in there just as just informational. So curious where our things may go in the future if if one of those bills goes through at some point. Is there anything we want to change about the text in red or anything about number 3? That's our bylaw is focused on number 3 at this point and the changes that are already there.
I like that it's simple. I'm a proponent, of changing this, but if you look at number 2, the planning board shall within 7 days from the date of submittal of a complete application. And shouldn't we standardize and say, like the date of the certification, right, the filing date, shouldn't we just keep it simple?
So 7 days from the date of the,
The filing date, using that same terminology. If that's, so the filing date's the legal, we just talked about that, when the town clerk stamps. And I feel like it's just better to use the same.
well, in the same way, it's like, so if we start at 3, shouldn't then that be public hearing within 65 days of the filing of an application? Is that what you're saying first? Because otherwise we don't have filing in our
No, that's
3.
true. And maybe forget it because I like that it's simple, but it's weird to use different.
What do you guys think about that? Do you think it's like, okay, the state law says filing, date of filing. So should the word receipt be changed to filing? And then in number 2, should, instead of submittal of a complete application, should that be? But I guess, we never define when a complete application, that's something that you guys, is just part of the process,
Part
right?
of the process.
But
Yeah.
it's you just told me it was the filing, so the filing means it's stamped by town clerk, and it shouldn't be stamped by town clerk unless it's complete.
No, he said
No,
when it's
Peter said
complete. is when
Then
it
they
gets-
stamp.
Then they,
Yeah.
yeah.
So if they
But that's called
file
the
and
filing
it's
date.
not complete, no, I think if you file and something's missing,
Yeah.
the clerk, and this is my experience with not these types of projects filings, which filings in general,
Yeah.
you file something and something's not there. The clerk calls you, it might not be that day, it might be the next day, and they
Yeah.
say X, Y, and Z thing is missing, can you run this down? They're not stamping it until you act, so you, in your mind, the date of filing was the day that you ran
I
it in and
understand,
handed
right,
it,
yeah.
right? So I think that's what Peter's, I think you guys are saying the flip.
But for our purpose, the filing date's when the town clerk stamps it.
No, that's not what,
That's,
Oh, I thought it was.
The filing date is when someone says, here you go, here's my stuff. And then they check it,
Yeah, so
That's
like
why we're
the,
saying receipt.
like the
saying
65
the
days,
receipt
the
day.
65 days is gonna be counted on the date of the town clerk stamp.
Which is the date of
Which can be
receipt.
different from the filing date.
So like,
Right?
if someone files something on Monday, the clerk on Tuesday says, I need X, Y, and Z thing, I'm gonna call them. We would consider the date of receipt Tuesday on the day that we stamp it and get whatever missing thing is.
Correct.
Whereas the filing date would be considered Monday.
But the state law says filing date then, so then it's.
Yeah, so when does the clock,
Right there. that's
yeah,
why-
yeah.
I thought we agreed the filing date was when this town clerk stamped, but you're saying it's different.
It says in filing certified.
The special permit shall hold a public hearing for which notice has been given as provided in section 11 on any application for a special permit within 65 days from the date of filing of such application.
Sorry, I was up here.
So they're saying filing certified up there, yeah, so then maybe we should use that terminology, assuming it's supported by state law. 'Cause it's just weird that it's a bunch of different,
It is-
potentially a bunch of different dates. Still.
You could, yeah, you could-
It is weird. It's, I mean, even in the state,
Yeah,
it's
they
like they're
don't-
saying two different things.
They are.
So,
I
I'm
don't
not,
think they meant to, but.
I'm
Yeah.
not particularly worried about it, because as long as I say 65 days, it's gonna be the same project, the same application.
No, that's the biggest picture we want, I'm just
Yeah.
saying if we're cleaning up,
Yeah.
in our own cleanup, it's still.
I'm just not saying I'm not sure we can clean it up. I'm not sure,
I don't-
because,
it's all about interpretation, right?
yeah.
And so I don't think it, we get the plans, we circulate it, we put them up online. That's what it's saying to do.
I'm okay with keeping it simple the way it is. I think the important thing is to get those 265s in line, and we acknowledge that there's some weird stuff going on with the state verbiage,
Yeah,
which I'm sure, I assume with different cases, it's probably been defined in some way, but I don't think it's the crux of the problem, so.
On the same paragraph, can we lose that his agent and make it just either say applicant's agent or just say agent? The applicant
Oh, the
or his
applicant.
agent shall.
the applicant or his agent, yeah.
Or,
You can say or agent,
or agent, yeah.
you can take out his, yeah,
Yes.
that's fine.
Okay, take out
That's
his.
fine. Yeah, the applicant or agent shall attend such public meeting in order to assist the planning board response, and that's all verbiage here. Obviously, the biggest thing too is, it used to say public information. Obviously, we're changing.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is,
yeah, because the special permit is a public hearing, so
yes, it's,
we want them both to be public hearings.
correct. I think that's the terminology I was most
Yeah,
concerned with.
okay. So everyone's good with that? We're good for wrapping it up, hopefully for next time? All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, I'm not done. Can you make it really quick? Because it was a really short little change? Okay, thank you.
I was just say, my name's Mark Tassoni, 119 Main Street. Getting to get bored of me now. I know you got the same thing, same page. All set over there?
Yes, sorry, Mark.
Same page, you got the same page of the 9.4.5, right? Okay. If you want things done in a town that is running at a good pace, don't let the state interfere, because they screw things up. The 30 days to an application, the 60 to 60 days is an excuse, and the applicant can say, oh, I'm not ready yet. I continue. It has happened here before. And the 7 days of submittal, Does that mean, like you just talked about, does that mean it has to be a complete filing? Or can they add things in the middle of the 7 days? Yes or no?
No, Mark, it's a complete application.
Okay. And when it is stamped or certified, it should be a big thing saying a complete, not partial, but complete file should be given to the office to be certified, nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Sorry. All right, so next on our agenda is, we're actually going to move ahead a little bit. We will just hold off just for one agenda item for the decision for 20 Ponderosa, and we can go right to the approval not required, because we have a few people here getting tired, just like we are.
So with that said, before Mr. Robin Hicks comes up to the microphone, this is an A&R plan for 11 Franklin Road, and Robin can explain.
Yeah, Robin Hicks, 11 Franklin Road. We have approximately a little over 15 and a half acres. We want approval not required. We have over 300 feet of frontage, so we're going to break off 150 feet. We're proposing a 1 acre lot. It's 3/4 acre zoning. We have I'll give you a little history of the property. We used to write. We could have put 22 lots on the property. What we did was we worked with the zoning board, planning board, select board. We restricted our use of the property to 8 additional lots, so the Valentine estate would work. Because the select board said, well, if we buy the Valentine estate, what's stopping the Ein and Hicks family from putting a 40B there? So this runs with the property. If we die driving home tonight, whoever takes over the property, it runs with it. If a developer buys it, which won't be in our lifetime, but if someone buys it, it runs with the property. So there's 8 additional lots. We're breaking one off, which is right in the front corner, to financially a little bit. And, we're working with a developer or developers, whoever wants that, we will look at the plan. They're not going to put a mobile home there. They're not going to put a prefab house there. But, so that's it.
So is there a,
Yeah,
you have that plan up there?
Yeah,
Okay,
the
there you
plan's actually, there's actually a plan in everyone's binder.
So
This is a plan that's for signature tonight. I've looked at this plan, I've looked at it, it meets the rule of 22, it meets all the zoning requirements, with the frontage in the land area. There was a note added, which respects the restricted covenant, which Mr. Hicks just spoke about, which was put together through the select board, the zoning board, and obviously the planning board at that time. The Valentine estate was purchased. So this works out. It's a regulated A&R. It creates one buildable lot.
Tell me where it is, I can't find it.
So another note, we presented the plan
Oh,
to
yeah,
Peter,
okay.
and Peter had some comments. We brought it back to the engineer, added some comments, brought it back. Peter had some more comments, and so we added those. So hopefully it works out for everyone.
And my comments were just to flush out the
Yep.
note about the restricted covenant, right? That was something that was on the town side, and so that was something that we worked on together to make sure it's there. There is one note on the plan that the driveway has to be
5 feet.
5 feet from any property line. That's within our bylaws, section 9.3 driveways. And so the driveway that exists today does have to be relocated to respect that new property line.
Yeah.
And obviously, Mr. Hicks does know that. But that's a typical note on an A&R plan that we do have. But yes, other than that, it meets the regulations of an A&R. That's the lot that will be created. Yep, that's the lot that will be created. And then deeper, as you can see over here.
And then the 5 feet driveway is currently right at that line, the existing
Be-
driveway.
Yes. As a scooch.
It has to scooch towards the
Yeah.
statue.
And our driveway's approximately, if you know where Spencer the dog is, our driveway's right next to that, and we have plenty of room to move it. It's, I have a tractor, I do a lot of stuff with my tractor.
Right, so the driveway he's talking about is the one that goes up to the rest of the property.
Yes.
It needs to be scooched a little bit further away from the new property you're creating.
Well,
Is that the-
yeah, we maintain that stone wall. We wanted to maintain the integrity of that stone wall. That's why we put the property line there.
Yep.
Not to follow the stone wall, so we held it back. So if you go into our driveway, there's a buffer zone from our driveway on a triangle where we have apple trees. It's probably about 30 feet, my end corner of our driveway to the new property line.
I know I've been up there, but it was a long time ago. Christmas
Come up anytime.
season, I think it was.
I tell everyone to come up and feed the horses and the goats and.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it seems pretty straightforward. Obviously, it's a very regular shape for a lot. So, does anyone have any questions? Sure.
I make a motion that I approve, approval not required, plan for 11 Franklin Road.
And are there any further questions? Anna, any questions? I don't know if she's,
No, I'm good.
okay. Sorry, I keep forgetting that you're there.
No worries. I can always raise my hand.
Okay, all right, roll call vote then?
Deepa Venkata.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Amanda Hayes, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. All right, sorry to make you wait all that time.
No, that's okay. Thank you for what you guys do for no pay.
So Robin, the planning board, after the meeting, will sign this. Yeah. Tomorrow I'll scan it, and then you can pick it up at any time and take it to the registry. Okay?
All right, thank
got
you.
it. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going back to,
Item 6, which is the review of the 20 Ponderosa Verizon wireless equipment upgrade decision.
thank you, and that's under what number in our, number 1, okay. Thank you. So this was pretty standard, I think. You said there was one line eliminated about, that was from an older,
Yeah, Kate
Version?
did send me a couple, I think there was 3 tweaks overall. One was a reference to a water tank. Obviously, it was a leftover from a previous decision. There was one about, there was 3 years on the special permit. That was changed back to 24 months as our bylaws state. And then I believe there was another Scribner's error with Anna Tesmalitsky. I had her as NA, and she was absent from the meeting.
actually, when it says that in number 8, it says a special permit shall lapse after 24 from the
Oh.
grant thereof,
So it needs to be 24 months.
or just 2 years, or 2
2
years, or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I wrote 24 months because that's how it's worded in our
Okay, so we
bylaw,
just need the
but
word-
not that it matters, I'm just saying
We
where
just
it
need
came
to add in
from.
the word months then,
Yeah.
so that's easy, so. Otherwise, 24 years seems like a long time.
Long way.
And was there a third one that?
Anna was absent, so I had her as NA when she was not in attendance. So
Oh,
the 4 of you here tonight will be the 4 actually voted to close the public hearing, and obviously,
Okay.
if we vote to accept, the 4 of us, and the 4 of you will sign the decision tonight.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have anything else with this one. Anyone have any comments or questions on this one?
I have a comment. I didn't decide to put an edit, because I think condition 1 covers it, but condition 1, pre-construction meeting with all subcontractors shall be at the town, held by the town before any work is started. So that, they're gonna have a big crane there, right? And it's only really impacting DPW potentially, but DPW is busy. And I feel like that needs coordination, but technically, I think at condition 1, at that meeting, the town can ask for whatever they want. But we're not explicit, right, about asking for any coordination, particularly coordination, safety barricades for the crane, and presumably they'll do it at that meeting.
That
But-
typically comes out in a pre-construction
Yeah,
meeting.
so I think we're okay, but
Yeah.
if someone wants to, I mean, we write these for someone that doesn't want to follow things, right? And do you have to mention it? That's all. I don't think, I kind of waffled, but I'm just bringing it up before.
Yeah, and knowing that site's so wide open
Yeah.
that I don't think that will be any issue.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm confident with DPW, you know, especially that's the DPW site, that they kind of know what they're doing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Versus if it was at a school or something, I might be more.
Mhm.
Okay.
I make a motion that we improve the special permit modifications Verizon Wireless 20 Ponderosa decision.
And a
I'll
second?
second.
Oh. And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna
Catherine.
Tesmanitsky, aye.
You cannot vote, right? If
Oh,
Uh,
I can't-
Yeah, Anna, you weren't here for the last meeting.
oh, I
so-
apologize. Can't
It's
vote for
okay.
that one. Got it.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Amanda Hayes, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So,
To be on the safe side, did you get someone to second other than me? Or do you
someone
need-
started a second, I think.
Second.
Great.
Okay, we'll have Deepa. I was gonna say, someone was saying at the same time you did, so. Okay, so. It's 6, it's 7. Okay, so the rest of these are, just a few little things. Discussion and comments for 61 Waverly. There was a notice that went out, and now I can't remember where I saw it, that asked for the ZBA was asking for comments for the Waverly Street 40B in the same way they asked for the 10 to 60 Main. And so my thought was, we had a much smaller document, obviously, for the 61 Waverly, but that we do the same thing. We put our memo with it, and we give them the letter that we sent to the state. Now, that project has changed. I don't know if you looked at the documents, but it's changed a lot since, I mean, it was never before the planning board, but it has changed a lot since we looked at it and made our comments. Because it was never for before our board.
Nope, it was never
No.
before this board. I can kind of add some color to that. So yes, when this came for comments from the planning board to Mass Housing, it was a different developer, and it was a different site layout, right? However, the past project was 226 units, and it was made up of 4 different buildings. 2 buildings were at 4 stories, 2 buildings were at 5 stories. The site was also kind of depressed from the rear, that kind of from Union Street, right? That's not the case. We have a new developer. The applicant is the Gutierrez Company, and they are proposing 1 large 5-story building, which is 226 units. Mass Housing approved the transfer letter back in December, and so with that transfer letter, that site eligibility, which was approved for Picard, which was the project, which was 226 units with the 4 buildings, 2 at 4, 2 at 5, to the Gutierrez Company, which is 1 large building at 5 stories. That is a change. The site work on the new project doesn't dramatically drop and lower that site. It kind of tables it, it kind of levels it off, and there's a access to Union Street from the site. So the site is different. The buildings are more the one building is more centralized in that site. It's still the same site at 8 acres, give or take. So the site has changed. So with that, Alvaro did send that out to all boards and committees to say, hey, let's get some comments back. Tonight, we're providing you the letter that the planning board drafted previously. And if people can go on and look at the plans, I think that's the best thing to do, and then kind of maybe send some comments back to myself and Alvaro. This project will be opened by the Zoning Board of Appeals on the 25th of March, and then most likely be continued for a month to go out for peer review, for civil and traffic peer review. That is the same thing that happened for the 10 to 60 Main Street project. And so we are coming back to a planning board meeting on the 27th. It will not be in time for the opening of this. However, very shortly after, if we could get something to the Zoning Board of Appeals, speaking for John Trefethen, the chair, I'm sure he would greatly appreciate comments from the planning board at that time.
Yeah, and I think actually, 'cause now remembering where we were in this conversation, that in this case, since so much has changed, I think we might want to talk about it a little bit again, and our comments might, I don't remember what we had in that letter, but it was based on that other proposal, and this one is quite different, and so that I think we might want to have a conversation about that first.
I'm
What-
looking at the letter now, and there are places, I think, where we're referencing the multiple buildings and the different heights, and I wonder if we just sort of use this as a jumping off point, but put something new together.
Yeah,
And the memo of the 1060 is just for reference, so
Yeah,
we
just for
duplicate that
reference,
for this
We
project.
can make a cover letter sort of
Yeah.
thing, and then once you have your comments, we can send a complete memo to them.
Because I mean, that's certainly a very different project, but I also think that there were like strategic considerations with the way that we responded to this.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, it's different. Is it drastically? You could argue that. However, the amount of units is the same, which is really what, in my eyes, mass housing looked at.
yeah.
And was limited to the total number of units. And so it is the same with that thread. However, it's a different site development plan.
So, I mean, what's the best course of action here? It is 20 to 10. What do we have on our agenda for in 2
So-
weeks?
So in 2 weeks, we're gonna have Eversource coming in for a scenic trees. They are gonna do some maintenance on one of their circuits here in town, which is a kind of an annual and/or biannual hearing that we typically do with Eversource. And I believe that's it, correct? Yeah,
Well, and then, oh, yeah.
and then the bylaws, we'll check
Is
the
the
bylaws one more time.
Historic Commission too? Is that,
The Historical Commission,
May be
yes,
back?
they could be back at that
Yeah.
time.
Are
Okay,
they supposed to be on for tonight?
They were. I talked to Jim Nielsen. Obviously, with everything that was going on tonight, they decided to slide back a little bit and kind of go from there. I know they were still
getting the map and stuff
getting
ready.
the map and stuff. And actually, Alvaro was nice enough to print them a new map, and we were kind of getting them some information. But that's where things kind of stand.
Yeah, so why don't we, I would recommend that we just put that on our agenda, that we all read through the letter, look at the project before we come to the meeting, and kind of be ready with how we want to alter this.
I'm traveling on 27th, but definitely I think this needs a thorough check with the floor plans too, because it references your East Union Street with setbacks, which is not the case right now.
Would you be, if you had a digital file of, would you be
I can
able
mark
to
it up.
mark it up? Yeah,
Yeah.
so at least have your thoughts on it?
Yeah, we have a Word version, we have everything, so.
Everything is online.
Send it?
Yeah, I send
Yeah.
it, but it's also online.
Good with that.
Okay. 'Cause I'm not feeling ready to jump into it at this time of the night.
Dense information to
Yeah,
read through
yeah, yeah.
at 10 o'clock.
Does anyone have any views on that? All right, so we'll put that on the agenda for next time. And hopefully we'll get through the other things quickly so that we can still approach it when we are more awake. Okay. And then the other thing on the, is,
This one's me.
yeah, discussion of change to cell tower approval. So, yeah. why
So
don't you
just to
take-
kind of set the table for this, and this is most likely going to be coming to the planning board. But back in April of 2022, we approved Verizon Wireless to update their antennas at 400 Cedar Street, which is a water tank tower here in Ashland. Verizon never did the work, right? However, this permit is still live because there was a Permit Extension Act that was signed into law. And so with that said, back in 2022, we approved them to take down, out of a total of 12 antennas, they were going to remove 9 and put 9 new ones up, right? They were gonna leave 3 antennas up there. So they have a total of 12 antennas. So because they didn't do the work, long story, they're like, hey, we're gonna scrap it. We wanna take all 12 down now and put 12 new ones up there, right? So they're changing the project a little bit. The question is, do we want to take this as a modification or just go through a whole public hearing process and rehear the application? And I talking to Tricia, she asked me to just to put it on the agenda, to poll the board, just to kind of put it out there. It's a cell tower. We all know it's more about public awareness and notification. And so if that's the direction the planning board wants to go, we can go that route, notify abutters, do all the notification, and then have the hearing, the public hearing, and to go in that direction. If not, we can do a minor modification to this permit, which is still live. And so I'm kind of looking at the board to wonder which direction you want me to take this. It's a cell tower, it's owned by the town, so we do have to sign consent on the application. And so that's how we are kind of a little bit in the driver's seat, at least about the public hearing process.
Is this a project where we did the structural evaluation? as
Yep.
They
well?
have to do it again.
Yep.
yeah.
They've already done it, and it's already been,
So the 9 and the 12 are apples to apples, it's exactly the same antennas?
correct,
but
same height.
Just 3 additional going up there?
And they redid the structural?
And all that stuff has already been peer reviewed.
But they didn't take care of, they didn't do any construction work after the 2022?
After 2022, no, Verizon put this on the shelf, they didn't touch it. And so now they're coming back and saying, hey, we need to do this work, and we're gonna do a couple things that are different to what we approved back in 2022.
But when
With
is
that-
the permit like good through? Like how close?
It's still, well, it was approved May 6th of 2022, right? But we did have that Permanent Extension Act that was passed this past summer,
Right.
which kind of added 2 more years on to everything.
So they have until 2026?
Correct. Yeah.
Are they extending the existing structure to
No.
add the 3 more?
No.
How are they fitting in the additional 3? Is it, because I'm guessing.
Well, they were leaving 3 up there.
But they were changing the mounts, right?
They were changing the mounts, right? Those, they were just gonna stay up there.
So So the three that's were staying up, that's coming down and new ones are going in its place?
Correct. They're just saying, well, we're not gonna leave those three up there, we'll just bring them down, put new stuff up. Let's just do it in one swoop, per se.
They were gonna replace 9, leave 3, now
Yeah.
they're replacing all 12.
Correct.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to, I thought maybe we wanted to talk about it if we wanted to relist it, is because it's a topic that, keeps coming up,
Going
that
back.
people have some concerns about, and that it's not the tower at the DPW, which is a little bit more isolated and very tall. This is the water tank, so, which is it's a very different animal, kind of thing.
So
So,
I think, here's the problem. I think you can't go wrong with notifying the public, right, and abutters. It's, my only reluctance is we know we can't really do too much, so it's like, I feel like that's a flaw of the whole thing. But I feel like we need to hear, right? That is our job. And people do respect that they at least get to be heard, I think. So I would say I don't want to draw it out. I don't think that's helpful, but I don't think we want to have people thinking like we were doing a backroom deal, so to speak.
that was my concern as well, like not just that, it is another 1/3 more than they said. I
Yeah.
don't think 1/3 is a small number, in this case. So, so my inclination was, I think we're gonna have to relist it, but I wanted it to be a board decision.
I think also just for people, if they got notification in 2022, 3 years ago, that work might be happening and then trucks show up,
Yeah.
that feels very, they're not aware of the permit extension, and I feel like
Yeah.
that just runs the risk of aggravating folks versus getting the new notice out there.
Yeah, and really it's just the newspaper mailings, and then you kind of go from there.
Yeah,
You know,
which
this is a-
is paid for by the applicant. all that,
Correct, it's
yeah.
paid for by the applicant. The applicant will pick, the applicant's gonna do a minor modification. We'll say, hey, this is the cost, we'll put you on the we'll put you on the agenda here, and you can kind of go through, obviously, like the wireless decision tonight, it was 2 meetings, it's 2 weeks. They had this for 3 years, right? So if we wanna do this, do it appropriately and notify, then I think it's our duty to do that. So I don't really have an iron in the fire, I just want to make sure that we had consensus.
Did they submit like the wireless study? Because if they're changing, I mean, like the Ponderosa just submitted a whole bunch that I'm within the
The
RF.
electrical
Yeah.
magnetic stuff, you know what, at the top of my head, at 10 o'clock, I can't pull up that file. and
But we
send
should
it to
ask
you.
for
We're
it
gonna
to
want
change.
that.
Yeah, but we can
Yeah.
do that, and I can get on the phone tomorrow and
Yeah, there's
Yep.
there's
give them
a
the heads
third
up.
more, there should be different data, I
Yeah.
assume, if,
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
all right, that's easy, we can take care of that.
okay. So we'll do that. And then unless there's something on this list, is there anything we need to do about the changes after planning board approval? We'll get there eventually.
I
right?
hope we can do it. It's something that would make sense on a lot of fronts.
I know,
so-
it's just that, yeah.
But
Some
not at
point,
10 o'clock or whatever time it is.
Right.
Almost 10.
some point we'll
I
have it.
loved how she used the form today.
I did.
Yeah.
I'd have to type it up, but it helped.
You made a start.
Okay, just to go down the list, I did have a CPC meeting. Week and a half ago. Applicants included the Bark Park, they needed a little bit more money for that, and Town Hall wanted to digitize a bunch of records, so we looked at money for that. Elvril here showed up, wanted money for the Arnold, for the Arboretum, I don't know, the Ashland Arboretum, so we gave him money for that. So, But it was good, so those things will be coming up at town meeting, for CPC. I think they were all good. Yeah, good things for Ashland, so. Other than that, I don't have any Metro West Regional Collaborative, stuff. Okay. All right, anything else on that list? Otherwise, we'll look at meeting minutes.
Before we do that, I just want to make a note, speaking with the comprehensive plan consultants, getting ready for our meeting next week. They have asked just to kind of float the idea out there that they're going to be looking for another joint meeting with the planning board and the select board. And that is going to be tentatively scheduled for June 4th, which is a select board meeting on a Wednesday night. They'll kind of review this stuff at their next meeting with the comprehensive plan, but when I talked to them last, they just kind of asked me to kind of float it out there. It's the first week of the month, so we won't have a meeting, so therefore it will be at the select board. Other than that, I have no updates.
All right, I guess we'll just take a minute to look at, we have February 19th and February 27th.
My only note on the February 19th minutes is the adjournment time. I think it must have been 8:15.
Probably.
Very long interview.
Started at 7:45, ended at 10:15. It's a very controversial candidate.
I was looking for them to like make the change, yeah.
Sorry, for February 27th, I was looking at just line 93. Looking at the number of rentals, whether they have considered developing these as, I think that should be condos, redeveloping these as condos rather than rentals, because I think that's what we were talking about. Oh, and then they say condominiums, yeah, in the next line. Right, any other changes that anyone spots? Sure,
We can do both, right?
I think so.
I make a motion that we approve the February 19th meeting minutes as with a small edit and the February 27th meeting minutes as presented.
Well, actually also with a small
Oh,
edit.
I'm sorry.
It was just changing one word from residence to
Ah.
condo.
I make a motion that the February 19th, 2025 and February 27, 2025 meeting minutes are approved with the small edits discussed.
Second,
Second that.
and a roll call vote.
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Amanda Hayes, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So that is taken care of. If there's anything else? We'll- Okay. Any other absences, known absences coming up?
Nope.
In that case, I will make a motion that we adjourn at 9:58 PM. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, and a roll call vote.
Deepa Venkatai.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Amanda Hayes, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. So that is it. We are over and out.